Hey everybody, Command Phase here. Today Leviathan came out, so that's really cool. Hopefully you guys are having fun putting your models together for that. Me, I am personally diving through the Crusade rules, because Crusade was a big part of the way that I played during Ninth Edition with a bunch of friends of mine. And so I want to know what the differences are. Previously, Crusade was a really clunky system in Ninth Edition. It wasn't really very elegantly explained. It was difficult for people to understand. It was a little bit convoluted. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a reaction video today, taking you guys through the changes and kind of my take on what Crusade is like in the new edition. If you guys are not familiar with Crusade or you've never actually played Crusade before, this is not an explanation video for Crusade. Really, that needs to be done kind of more in depth. I'll have an official video on the topic in the next couple of days, but this is really just a reaction um, and kind of a quick catch up for people who maybe want to know some of the differences between this version of Crusade and the version for previous editions. So, with that out of the way, let's get started. I'm also not going to go into a huge amount of detail, like reading through sentence by sentence on the pages. I've already scanned this document, so we'll kind of be going off the cuff. I really don't want to allow this video to be an opportunity for people to essentially pirate GW's campaign or like Crusade rules. So please, if you guys are interested in playing Crusade, purchase the core rulebook or wait until next weekend to purchase the actual official rules for Crusade. And please support Games Workshop in that way. So yeah, no intention here to just provide the Crusade rules illegally to anybody else. All right, let's start talking. So the first thing is, if you've played Crusade before, you'll be familiar with a Crusade force, essentially what's called an order of battle. This is your um, main army, a pool basically of all units that you can take in the Crusade. This is unchanged from Ninth Edition. As you go through Crusade, you're going to be building a standing army. The standing army represents all units you can possibly choose from to take to a particular battle. It's almost like if you had like an army shelf at home and it's got like 6,000 points worth of I don't know, Tau on it. And then when you actually go to play a Crusade match, you get to pick from those units that are in your order of battle and to actually play that game with. So nothing has really changed here that much, except there's a couple of things. First is you can add or remove units from your order of battle at any time. That removing used to cost RP to do. Um, Second, the same things remain where you can change the loadout of your unit or change its size using requisition points. You also start your order of battle at 1,000 points and crucially use points because power level is no longer part of the game. So you're going to be starting at 1,000 points instead of 500. It seems like Games Workshop wants to keep their 500 point games kind of relegated to the combat patrol version of the game, so that's a pretty welcome change. I personally think that 500 points is good for people who are just getting into the game, but not a very good starting point for Crusade, especially given how much missions are going to play with actions and kind of an action economy in mind in this edition. Ah. Last thing is that Crusade, of course, just like it was in Ninth Edition, requires a lot of bookkeeping. There's cool tools like Administratum and things like that, which I'll link in the description that you can actually use. I don't believe they're updated for 10th edition Crusade yet, but I'm sure they will be in the coming days. So be prepared to actually like keep a tally of all your different units that are in your order of battle because they will be gaining experience. They will be getting a special battle traits or battle scars that change how they play on the table. You will need to track your kills and your number of times well, the overall experience level. Additionally, one thing that's interesting about Crusade that we'll kind of get into in a second is that units, as they gain experience, become worth more quote unquote Crusade points, which kind of acts as a standing metric that represents the relative veterancy or level of experience of your particular force. If you're playing a match against another player and you have many more Crusade points than them, you'll be then the player with the fewer number of Crusade points will be given a special bonus to represent the fact that they're kind of underdogs in that scenario. So that's a nice mechanic that allows um, armies of different experience levels to still actually be able to play against one another. So, all right, that's it for Crusade Force. This is, of course, a sheet that you can use. I haven't actually looked in the Warhammer app to actually see how their Crusade tracking system is done. Hopefully, it's pretty nice, but my preferred tool for that is Administratum because you can actually track battles in real time and track experience. and kills and battle scars and things like that accordingly. And both players can get on board to validate the game so that it's actually um, valid and you're not just over on your own modifying your Crusade force to your heart's content. Okay, we've already discussed order of battle in Crusade force versus Crusade army. You're going to create an order of battle over the course of the game. There is a separate resource that's called requisition points. I don't see it here. All right. And then what are you tracking for each unit on the Crusade? Well, you're gonna name the unit unique name. This all this stuff is pretty much unchanged from ninth. So number of models, the war gear that it has, any enhancements that it has, and enhancements in this, I mean, they don't really they work like they do in 10th edition. So enhancements are worth points. They're not worth like a certain number of CP before the battle. And the way that you actually apply them to units has been changed just a little bit. So any keywords, any rules, yep. And then you're going to track your battle scars, your battle honors, your experience, your combat tallies, total number of crusade points for that unit. And we'll go over what those mean in a second. So basically, they're just saying you need to track a lot of additional information for each unit um, over the course of the crusade. So a lot of bookkeeping here, and that's always been the case. All right. So one of the key things that differentiates Crusade from a normal game of 40K is that as you're essentially playing in a big story, and your units over the course of that narrative actually gain experience, depending on how well they do in battle. And so the experience that you actually attain allows you to get unique upgrades to either your weapons or your unit's data sheet, which we'll be going over later when we're actually talking about battle honors. Those things are called battle honors, and battle honors represent kind of a global list of different upgrades that a unit can get. Some of which are global, and some of which are kind of specific to the narrative at hand. In this case, it's the Tyrannic War. We'll go over that in a second too. Experience points. This is so. How do you get experience points when you actually are playing games? Well, you get them in the same way that you did at ninth. You're going to get an experience point just for showing up. You're going to get an experience point for every 3 enemy units that you destroy, which is why you need to keep track of the number of units that you've killed, not models, units. And then you also, at the end of each game, can select a unit to mark for greatness, which just gives that unit 3 experience points. There are other ways you can do it, like missions. Um, and then there are some things that like can't get experience points there. Epic heroes, fortifications, swarms, and then any summoned or replacement units. So, for example, if I summon some Ripper swarms to the table, they don't become like part of my order of battle, and B, they can never gain experience points, which is a good thing. Epic heroes is a notable thing here too. Narrative is really about crafting your own heroes, and as such, like they really are discouraging people from taking named characters like Rabute Gilliman or Marneus Calgar or any of those epic heroes because this is really supposed to be about you as a player creating your own army with your own named characters and your own story for those characters. And if you can just take Rabute Gilliman, that detracts from kind of the narrative value of the campaign and the personal kind of expressiveness that you have in that campaign. So they've taken away the ability for epic heroes to gain experience here, which kind of deters you from actually taking those units because you're not going to get any functional benefit from playing with them over any long period of time. Everything starts with 0 XP. You can get them in the ways that we described above. And then, of course, uh, yeah, you're just going to tally that. They're just saying, well, do a tally on your Crusade card to actually tally experience. Well, of course, you should be keeping track of your experience. It's pretty important. All right. Next is requisitions. And I am very sorry for this being so blurry. I took these in the car earlier today, so we'll have to deal with my blurry cam if you want to get this news relatively quickly. Um, Requisitions is essentially a word for supplies that your army has. And requisitions are a separate resource that's used to dictate how you upgrade and improve, not units in particular, um, but your order of battle itself. So if I want to have a bigger standing army, or if I want to modify units that are part of my standing army, that's what requisitions are for. One of the most confusing things about Crusade is that there's all of these different points floating around. There's requisition points, there's experience points, there's Crusade points. And so we'll take a minute here and we'll just talk about what each of those are like functionally represent. because throwing around all those different things can be confusing to a new player. So you can think of it like this. You have your overall um, order of battle, your roster of units that you can take to any particular game. If you want to make changes to that, making it bigger, uh, or modifying units that are part of it, like changing their war gear or changing their squad size, or doing things like removing battle scars or bad things that have happened to your units on your battle roster. That is what requisition points are for. So requisition points are to change your order of battle. So your big roster of units that you can take to any game, you're going to use requisition points to make changes to that roster. Kind of like if you were into deck building and you wanted to like make changes to your deck and like swap cards out and do stuff like that, that's what requisitions are for. Um, you start the crusade with 5 requisitions. You can never have more than 10, and you get 1 requisition point for each game that you win. The next thing, and what we just talked about, are experience points. Now, if requisition points are at the army wide level, the order of battle level, then experience points are at the unit level, unit by unit. Each unit will have its own number of experience points that it earns by playing games, and you will spend that experience in order to upgrade that unit. So, giving it battle honors, things like weapon enhancements, better traits on its unit card, and even some campaign specific upgrades. So, again, your order of battle, your big army, requisition points are for that. Each individual unit in that army uses experience points in order to make changes to that, to those units and improve them. And the final thing is Crusade points. And like we kind of touched on earlier, Crusade points are kind of a meta currency, essentially reflecting the relative veterancy or experience level of the units that I take to a game. Because you can imagine that if you're playing Crusade, and I've played, well, first of all, Crusade or narrative is a mode that allows any player to play against any other player, regardless of how much they've played the Crusade. When you play in a narrative, you're going to be improving your army, and how improved or how good your army is going to be dependent on how many actual games or narrative games or Crusade games that you've actually played. So you could easily imagine a scenario where I have played a ton of Crusade games, and so I've played like 20 Crusade games, and so my force is like really grizzled and experienced. They have a lot of different upgrades floating around. And then my friend who just got into Warhammer, or it's their first time playing a Crusade game, has not played any Crusade games. And so they really should have no hope of winning against my army, even though we are coming to the table with the same number of points to play the game, because my guys just have way more experience than his do, and that means that my units are going to be functionally better than his. Or Crusade points are a metric for how much experience I have, or how much experience my army has. And you can, at the beginning of the game, you compare that to the Crusade point total of your opponent, and then the underdog, whoever has the lower number by a certain metric, it's a certain number of blessings, um, kind of special abilities to kind of even the odds, tip that balance more to an even playing field, even if the players aren't as leveled up, let's say. So again, requisition points, overall order of battle, how you use these points to make changes to that. Experience points, use these to upgrade units. Crusade points is kind of a meta stat that will determine if one player is going to get special bonuses at the beginning of the game because they are a less experienced and therefore underdog battle force. So in this state with requisitions, again, start with 5. You can never have more than, you start the crusade with 5. You can never have more than 10, and each battle you play gets you 1. All right, pretty simple. These are things that you can spend requisition points on. Again, apologies for the blur. There's nothing I could do here. One important note here is that for players in ninth, increasing supply limit increases your Crusade supply limit by 200 points instead of 100 points. This is effectively what you spend requisition on points on to make your roster bigger. So if I have, I start the Crusade with 1,000 points, but I want to actually start to play with 1,200 points or 1,400 points, or, a bigger and bigger shelf of units to choose from, then I need to be spending requisition points to increase the size of my standing army. This is not the same as increasing your points limit for every game that you're playing. When you do that, actually, like say when two players show up with a different total supply limit because they played a different number of games. For example, I've played a ton. I have 3,000 points in my order of battle, and Joe Schmo has 1,000 points in his because he's just getting started. We don't play 3,000 points versus 1,000 points. That would be unfair. Instead, Joe Schmo just brings his 1,000 points of models from his order of battle, and I'm going to choose from mine 1,000 points to play with. So for my 3,000 points order of battle, I'm going to pick 1,000 points to actually create a list with, and that's what I'm going to bring to that Crusade battle. But obviously, if you want to get the higher point games, then this is how you do it. Both players are going to have to increase their supply limit. This lets them bring new units and do other things like that. Another important thing is when you increase your supply limit, you just automatically add new units. You don't have to pay requisition points to add new units or to remove units from your order of battle. You just increase your supply limit and then pick units to fill that void immediately. This is another thing, renowned heroes. This is kind of a different, this is the way I think to um, yeah, add enhancements from your specific detachment to a unit or to only a character. So this is whenever you, let me try to think of how to explain this. So give me a second, I'm thinking. Okay, so every order of battle is going to have characters in it. Those characters are those characters can take enhancements from your detachment. So if you're playing like the Gladius Strike Force detachment and you want to take some of the enhancements that are provided by that detachment, you don't just start with those. You actually need to spend requisition points in order to equip characters with those enhancements. And you also will pay points for those enhancements, as you would normally when you're constructing a list. So, for example, if I wanted to take a Primaris Captain in my order of battle, and I wanted to give him the Bolter Discipline enhancement, which is an enhancement from the Gladius Strike Force, I need to spend one requisition point in order to add the Bolter Discipline enhancement to that character. And I'm going to increase his points cost accordingly in my order of battle, as if I were adding that enhancement to that character when creating an army list. The one thing of note here is that you usually cannot add enhancements to characters unless they have gained battle honors, and that's an experience threshold in order to actually gain an upgrade. So usually you can't give enhancements to characters unless they are at a certain experience level, like level 2 or level 3, and then you can give them enhancements. But when you first create your Crusade Force, you can spend a requisition point to just give a character an enhancement. So that's another thing you can do here. And obviously you can't buy enhancements that would cause you to go over your supply limit. And this thing actually costs more requisition points the more enhancements that you have on your order of battle. So, and it looks like to a maximum of 3 RP. So you can add all 4 enhancements that are part of your detachment, but it's just going to get progressively more expensive to do so. Next, those legendary veterans. So that's a little bit of a change too, actually, for renowned heroes from ninth. When anytime you recruit a new unit, you could spend the requisition points to add warlord traits or relics to that newly recruited character. And this time, you're only going to add the enhancement to the very first one you recruit when you first make your Crusade Force. So choose wisely. And then every additional character can be added to your order of battle, but actually needs to gain levels, usually 6 experience, in order to actually start taking enhancements and using this Renowned Heroes requisition. Um, Legendary Veterans, basically each unit that you have is, each non-character unit's capped at 3 battle honors that they can have. Characters have 6. If you want to take a unit like Space Marine Intercessors and make them legendary, you can spend 3 RP to up their maximum number of battle honors up to 6. Rearmament supply is 1 RP to change a unit's loadout. So usually when you take a loadout, you're set in stone. But you can change it by spending requisition points. This requisition is 1 to 5 to remove a battle scar. Battle scars are way more impactful in this version of Crusade. They're way harder to actually get rid of. Um, For example, you used to just pay one requisition point to get rid of a battle scar. Now you're going to pay requisition points equal to the number of battle honors the unit has. So um, it's 1 RP plus 1 additional RP for each battle honor the unit has. So the more like elite a unit is, actually, the more difficult it is to remove a battle scar for that unit. And then fresh recruits. This is basically lets you change squad size in a unit, but if a unit is like really experienced, then you can't just like it's more expensive to do so. Um, I think to reflect the fact that like maybe like a little small 5-man unit can't just become a 20-man unit of like extremely experienced warriors. Um, which you might do, I guess, if you were trying to game the system. So that's a nice deterrent from people doing that. All right, let's talk about experience and what battle honors. So battle honors are experiences. The experience thresholds to actually start gaining battle honors is the same as it was in 9th edition Crusade. Essentially, from 0 to 5 experience, you're going to get nothing. But as soon as you hit between 6 experience, your unit becomes blooded, and you get a battle honor. Next level is at 13 experience. Following level is 31, and the last level is 51 experience points. So it's pretty easy to get a unit 1 battle honor. It's pretty tough to get them a bunch. There are different types of battle honors. One type is battle traits. Battle traits essentially modify your unit's data sheet, and you are going to, when you do this, you either choose one that's thematic or you roll on the following table. Let's see. Well, I guess I'll show you the table later. This is not the table. Yeah, this just describes that whenever you gain an experience rank, so when you rank up to the new rank here using experience points, you get a battle honor. Battle honors um, allow you to either take battle traits, which are new skills and abilities, weapon modifications to upgrade an item or war gear, and a Crusade Relic, which is a rare and powerful artifact. And then each time you gain a battle honor, increase your Crusade point total by 1 or 2 if Titanic. So again, the 1 point increase here is that kind of veterancy, that level of experience, in order to even the playing field if you have more of these things than your opponent. One important thing to note here is that only characters can be heroic or legendary rank, again, unless you spend the 3 RP to make a unit eligible to be heroic or legendary rank. And usually only characters can take Crusade Relics. This is not something that regular units can take. I think next, hopefully, we start going over battle traits. Oh, we're going to go over weapon mods first. So, weapon modifications, again, blurry text. So, rest in peace, your eyes. Weapon modifications are things that you can take on units. Characters can take them. If there's a unit champion, then the unit champion has to put the weapon modification on his or her weapon. That's pretty important because you could have, like, say, a squad of Cavalite warriors with a Dark Lance in it. But if that unit has a unit champion, a Cyberite, then you actually can't upgrade the Dark Lance because this weapon modification has to be um, prescribed, granted to the unit champion's weapons. So this is something to note if you want to start handing weapon modifications to units, just know that they're going to go on the unit champion if there's one on the data card. If there's not one on the data sheet, if there's not like a sergeant or a commander or something like that, then you can give this to any weapon in the unit, and so that actually becomes really good. Weapon mods were okay in previous in 9th edition, but generally a global bonus to a unit's data sheet was considered better. As such, now to kind of even the playing field for these, when you select a weapon, you roll 2d6 and consult the table below. You can get options like improving the ballistic skill or weapon skill characteristic by 1, adding 1 to its strength, not as important in this edition. Improving its AP by 1, adding 1 to its damage, which is huge. Adding 1 to its attacks, or giving it the precision roll whenever you score a critical wound. Again, not that impactful there either. But these are cool. In specific squads, you're really going to want to hunt for these, like, say, a Devastator squad, for example. And yeah, you can do this multiple times in the same squad. So if I had, like, say, a unit of Devastators with 3, say, grav cannons, I could roll the weapon modifications thing, each time choosing one different grav cannon from that unit to actually modify. That's a ton of bookkeeping and actually makes it kind of hard to play the unit on the table, but you can get some pretty cool stuff with those. Next, for some reason, they're going to go over Crusade Relics. Crusade Relics are of different ranks, and you could of different kind of caliber. They are unique pieces of war gear that are usually unique to the specific Crusade narrative that you're playing. And again, they're of different caliber. Usually, you can only give them to characters, and they are either Artificer rank, Antiquity rank, or Legendary rank. And each one of those ranks has an associated level of experience that the unit equipping them needs to have. So, in order to gain a Crusade Relic, not only will you need to have reached a new, essentially, level for that character and are thus eligible to buy a Crusade Relic, but you also must be at a specific threshold in order to get better Crusade Relics. And each of these, because they're so good, increases your Crusade point accordingly. So you're not, if you take a legendary Crusade Relic, you're going to add +3 to that unit's Crusade points total to represent the fact that it hasn't gotten a little uptick in power. It's like got a huge leap in terms of its power level. Um, and there is no cap on these. The only cap is the level of the character, but you can get as many Crusade relics as you want. People who are used to the word relic might, from ninth edition, might think that you're only limited to one of these because characters can only ever equip one relic. Well, in Crusade, you can have as many different Crusade relics as you have the experience points to buy. Obviously, you're capped out because past legendary rank, there are no additional ranks. But you can, for every time you level up, you can take a Crusade relic on a character and he can end the Crusade with 6 relics if he wants to. Not necessarily a great idea, but something to think about. And then before, this is so weird. I'm just going to go to battle traits, I think, really quickly because we're talking about them right now. But they are, I think, specific to the Tyrannic War Crusade, so they're over here in the book. But we are talking about unit upgrades, so we'll talk about battle traits now. Battle traits are, again, upgrades to a unit's data sheet. It will depend on what type of units, what table it rolls on. You can pick these, but if you're a man, you're going to roll it like a man. So, like, take the risk. Everyone's doing it. It's great. So you have character units here. They get things like Scout 9 inches, Feel No Pain 5 plus. They can reroll Battle Shock tests. They get Sustained Hits 1. These things are good. Most of these are going to be good. Vehicle units can get things like a fire veteran vulnerable save. They can shoot at things in engagement with no penalty. They are better at surviving weathering small arms fire. They reroll hit rolls of 1. We won't go over all of them, but you can see that these are nice, impactful upgrades to have. Infantry units, blurry text alert, can either get Feel No Pain 6 plus, Scouts 9 inches, add 1 to objective control, which is like, that's amazing. And other similar things. Mounted units, which is anything on a horse or a bike or a skyboard or whatever, are going to have a different table to roll on. And again, because I'm not encouraging any kind of plagiarism, we're not going to spend a ton of time on this page. And then this one we'll talk about later because monsters and vehicles in the Tyrannic War narrative specifically are kind of handled a little bit differently. Or, sorry, Striding Behemoths being monsters. Vehicles, of course, have their upgrade table right here. Monsters are handled a little bit differently in the Tyrannic War Crusade narrative rules, and so this table is not going to make sense on its own. In context of what else is being offered here, it will start to make sense though. So we'll go over that later. And with that being said, that's battle traits, Crusade relics, and weapon modifications. Those are the upgrades that you spend experience points to attain in Crusade. And now we'll talk about battle scars, because you can improve your guys. Of course, your guys could get, totally shafted. They are going to be spending an entire time at war during over the course of a whole story. So to represent like bad things that can happen to them whenever they're destroyed, you can gain battle scars. And gaining battle scars is not super easy, but it is very impactful when it happens. So basically, whenever a unit is destroyed, you're going to roll a d6 at the end of the battle. If you roll a 1, it's going to get a battle scar and you're going to cry. So in ninth edition Crusade, battle scars were not that big of a deal because You had two options. You could take the battle scar, which always sucked, or you could just chop 6 experience points off the unit. And if the unit had no experience points, then you just chopped off all the experience points that would have earned that game, which is just what everybody did because nobody likes to have the battle scar. So Games Workshop has removed that, and now when you get a battle scar, you are either going to have to get rid of one of your battle honors, which sucks, or, and of course, you're going to dock your Crusade points by one because you shouldn't have to pay a premium for a battle honor you no longer have. Or you're going to get a battle scar, and battle scars are bad. And the only way to really remove them, again, is to spend requisition points. But it's not just one requisition point. It's one requisition point plus one for every battle honor you have. So elite units are really going to get totally. They're not going to be happy to have battle scars. We'll put it that way. Battle scars look something like this. They are much more devastating than they were. So I'm actually going to read through these because they're actually way worse than they were. So the first one, crippling damage. Unit can't advance. Must subtract one from move characteristics when it moves. That sucks. Battle weary. You subtract one from a test whenever you take battle shock, leadership, desperate escape, or out of action. So this one's not good to get because it makes all your other out of action tests worse. In addition, failing battle shock on this edition is pretty bad. Falling back from combat with this unit is pretty bad. Models are going to start to get destroyed. Fatigued, subtract one from objective control, and you never get a charge bonus, so you're like always fighting second. This, I think, is probably the worst one to get. Well, maybe not. We'll see. Disgraced, you can't use stratagems on the unit, and it can't be marked for greatness. Mark of shame. Um, you can't form an attached unit, so if you get this on a character, get bent, I guess. And you're unaffected by the aura abilities of friendly units, and you can't be marked for greatness. And then deep scars. Whenever a 6 to hit is scored against you, that attack auto wounds. So giving your opponent lethal hits. And it's awful. These are awful, but they are thematic and they are going to be fun. Attached units. I'm actually going to read through this because I actually haven't. So bear with me here. Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's interesting. Okay, so attached units are kind of units with leaders in them are a unique thing in 10th edition now. So there are some rules about how experience works with leaders and units. From what I understand, um, when you combine a leader and a unit, any battle scars or battle traits are going to apply to everybody. They're going to kind of merge together. But then as soon as one is destroyed, usually the unit, then all the battle scars and battle honors of the thing that got destroyed are now no longer part of that unit. You just become your own individual unit again. You can only use abilities if, like scouts or infiltrators, if both the attached character and the unit have those abilities. And they have to specify that because some things in this give you the ability to scout. Um, you have to take an out of action test for both the leader and the bodyguard unit, not just one. Both of them will get an experience point for being in the battle, even though they are technically one unit, not two different units. And each time an attached unit adds to any combat tallies, and each time it would gain experience for any reason, like doing an agenda or being marked for greatness, you have to choose between the leader and the bodyguard unit. They aren't applied to both. So that makes sense. Nice little bookkeeping there. It is kind of a little bit strange, but it makes total sense. You can't like attach a unit to a squad, complete a 2 experience agenda for that squad, and then get 2 experience on both the leader and the squad. You have to choose. So makes sense. All right. Mustering a Crusade army is not much different than mustering a regular army, except instead of choosing from like all the models that you own, you're going to choose from just those models that are part of your order of battle. So you're going to select a battle size. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's only 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000. So previously in ninth edition Crusade, you would play a game at a points level based on whoever had the smaller order of battle. So if I have 3,000 points and you have 1,200 points in your order of battle, we're going to play a 1,200 point game. It looks like if that same scenario happens, you're both going to play a 1,000 point game. That's actually nice because it cleans up the mission rules a little bit. It's kind of hard to play a 1,000 point mission or a mission designed for 1,000 points with like 1,400 points. And it's also hard to play a mission designed for 2,000 points with only 1,400 points. So it looks like you are bracketed at these specific points values when actually you are creating a list, which I like. I think that's a great change. Um, you start your army roster. You select a faction. You select attachment rules. This is the same as building an army list for 40k. And then you select your units. You have the same restrictions as building a regular army list, and then you pick a character to be your warlord. So, pretty cool. The only real difference is the select battle size here, because you're going to be pulling units from your order of battle, and your order of battle might actually have a different maximum size than the battle size that you choose. All right, this I think is other ways to gain experience. So I'll kind of go over these. I'll touch on them a little bit. So first of all, we already covered battle traits. The Crusade Relics, the specific rules for them are listed in here, even though we talked about how to get them earlier. Monsters and those who hunt them is specific to the Tyrannic War narrative. And to kind of describe it in brief, you can follow the usual battle honor track. Or, instead of doing that, you can choose upgrades that are narratively specific to the Tyrannic War campaign. There are essentially two different tracks here, one for any unit that is not a monster or vehicle, and one for units that are monsters or vehicles. And you can essentially start to get those specific upgrades instead of getting battle traits or weapon enhancements. They still count as battle honors, which means that you still only have a maximum of 3 you can get, or 6 if you're a character, but these are flavorful and specifically designed for the Tyrannic War narrative. And this is a cool thing because every different narrative supplemental book that they release, they can introduce a new narratively themed specific set of battle honors that you can get. So we'll go over those. Then there's rules for how to play a Crusade mission. Then there's rules for Crusade Blessings, which again are like if you have less Crusade points by a certain amount than your opponent at the start of a game, based on the units that each of you has decided to take to that particular game, you are going to get a Crusade Blessing, which is an upgrade. Usually it's some kind of boon to make the battle more even. Agendas are kind of like secondary missions for Crusade. There are no secondary missions or tactical or fixed secondary objectives like you would have in match play or open play for Warhammer 40k. In Crusade, you actually get to pick fixed secondary missions called agendas, which don't contribute to your victory on a mission, but they actually do give you more experience points to upgrade your units with when you complete them. So there's a list of agendas specific to the Tyrannic War narrative here. Then, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not. Yeah, the monsters and those who hunt them are part of the Tyrannic War, but I think these are agendas are universal. There are no, because we're working with indexes, there are no faction specific agendas yet, but I'm assuming when we start getting codexes, these will start to appear. Then there are specific rules for the Tyrannic War campaign, specifically teams and who wins. And then there are the actual Crusade mission cards. So we're going to go through these kind of quick, okay? All right. Battle traits. We already went over these. Crusade Relics. I am not going to spend time going over these again. Some of these are good. Some of these are very good. If you really want them, then I guess rip the video. But please support Games Workshop and buy the actual supplemental material, or wait for them to be uploaded onto like Wikipedia or something like that in order to get them. So we're not going to go over them here. Legendary relics, though, are absolutely insane, doing things like allowing you to ignore invulnerable saves and the like. Monsters and those who hunt them. Let's talk about the unique Tyrannic War upgrade tracks here. This is something you get to choose when a unit gains its first level. So you start off as like a recruit, right? But once you get 6 experience points, you're going to become blooded. And at that point, you can spend 1 requisition point to basically designate that newly blooded unit. Well, blooded rank or higher. So you can't do it until you hit at least level 1. And you can, in addition to choosing from the normal set of battle honors, you get the Tyrannic War Veteran keyword, which lets you either gain the Monster Hunters keyword and associated upgrade path, or the Striding Behemoths keyword and its associated upgrade path. Striding Behemoths is important because there are battle honors that apply specifically to Striding Behemoths. So again, if you're playing in the Tyrannic War campaign only, then when your unit gains its first rank or any subsequent rank, you can spend a requisition point in order to give that unit the Tyrannic War Veteran keyword, which allows it to access to these specific Tyrannic War upgrade paths, either the Monster Hunters upgrade path if they're not a monster, or the Striding Behemoths upgrade path if they are a monster or walker, not vehicle, walker. It says so here. And the way that you actually get additional battle honors, and this is a little weird, and I'm not sure this is good design, okay? So bear with me. Usually, we kind of talked about how you get experience points earlier. You either get experience points for being part of games, for destroying units, or for completing agendas or being marked for greatness, okay? Those are the 3 ways that you get experience points to get battle honors. Not so with these specific Tyrannic War Veteran battle honors. You get experience points that contribute to that upgrade tree by either destroying an enemy unit, which adds 1, or destroying a Striding Behemoths unit, so another unit from the same narrative that is a monster or a walker and has chosen this upgrade path. In which case you add 3, or you add 6 if it's Titanic. Once you hit 10 or more, you can progress along your upgrade path and get a battle honor from the upgrade path. And then you reset it to 0. So this is a separate experience point tracker with separate rewards, which we'll go over here, that are unique to the Tyrannic War campaign. So if you choose the Monster Hunters path, you're going to start with Giant Slayers, which gives you reroll hit rolls of 1 against monsters or vehicles. And then you will choose one of these paths to go down. So you could choose this path here, which is you worsen the armor penetration of attacks made against you by monsters or vehicles. In which case your options are to go to this Titan's Bane upgrade node or this Hamstringing Attacks upgrade node. Or you can choose this upgrade path, which gives you access to Titan's Bane or Nimble Defense. And Nimble Defense being a 5+ Feel No Pain against monsters or vehicle units. It's extremely good. So these bonuses are good. If you are a monster or walker, you start on the Thunderous Blows node, and then follow the lines accordingly when you choose an upgrade. And again, we're not going to go over them specifically here, because I'm worried about copyright violation. All right, next, we're going to talk about playing a Crusade mission. First, you select a battle size, of course, based on a player's order of battle. You muster Crusade armies, you determine the mission. To do that, you roll a d6 based on the battle size that you're playing, and that's the mission that you're going to play. Onslaught only has 3 missions because it barely ever gets played. Most people are playing Incursion or Strike Force. This page sucks. I am sorry. I didn't notice the glare. You're going to determine attacker or defender, read the mission rules, place objective markers, create the battlefield, different board size based on different game size. Select your agendas. Both players secretly select 2 agendas and write them down and then reveal them to each other simultaneously. And then select your Crusade Blessings. Basically, if there's a difference of at least 5 between the players' Crusade point totals, the player with the lower number of Crusade points is the underdog and gains a number of Crusade battles depending on the Crusade Blessings, depending on the difference. And we'll figure out more about that later. And then it plays like regular missions with objectives. You're going to play with victory points like you do in a regular game of 40k. After that, you declare battle formations, so like you would in a normal game. Then deploy your armies, determine first turn, resolve all. Basically, this is normal 40k. so won't spend too much time on that. Afterwards, though, the end step is a little bit different. You're going to determine the victor, and the victor gets a specific bit bonus based on the mission being played. Usually, it's more experience or access to like battle honors or things like that. You also get to update your Crusade cards. You must do this. This includes like taking out of action tests for destroyed units, assigning battle scars, choosing battle honors. Usually, you want to do this with another player around two, also to verify your choice. So it's good to do it right after the game and not like do it at home later. And then you update your order of battle accordingly. Cool. All right. So if you're the underdog, what are these Crusade blessings? Well, depending on the difference in points, you're going to get either 0, 1, 2, or 4 Crusade Blessings. These things are pretty cool. This one, for example, Prepared Positions, gives you the benefit of cover as long as you're wholly within your deployment zone, even if you wouldn't usually get cover. This one lets you start the battle with 2 CP. You can get an additional agenda. There's a lot of really cool ones here. Critical Strike, Outmaneuver. We're not going to go into specifics here, but if you're Tyranids, because this is the Tyrannic War campaign, you get some extra additional things you can choose. You don't worry if you're not a Tyranid, you get extra things for not being a Tyranid. Agendas. Agendas are ways that you would gain experience points. It's nice to have a universal list of these. Again, we're not going to go over them completely. I'll make a video that actually goes over them, I think, thoroughly later. This is just my initial impressions. So if a unit hasn't been destroyed, gain 2 experience. If it's not below half strength, it gains 1 additional experience point. Okay, cool. If you're Tyranids, then you get experience points based on how many table quarters you're in at the end of the battle. And I think you pick a unit in each of those table quarters if you outnumber your opponent to get 2 experience. So these are just ways to get experience points. Some are going to be better than others. We'll probably have to suss that out as we start playing Crusade. And then the last thing we're going to cover is the Tyrannic War campaign itself. So, how does this particular narrative structured? How do we determine who wins and who loses? Well, first of all, they say um, you're gonna. This is going to be a team game, and there is going to be a winner. Your teams are either the defenders, so people defending the subsector, the invaders, so people who are trying to take over the subsector, or raiders, so people who are like have their own agendas or are just being opportunist. And you're going to try to divide your player base for whoever's playing the Crusade into these 3 camps in order to try to make them as even as possible. Um, and this can support really any number of players. You could have 3 players, 1 for each team. You could have 2 players, 1 for 2 teams, or you could have 30 players, but you want to try to make it like 10 on each team. They want you to take a campaign master to kind of structurally organize everything and keep everybody on the same page. They suggest that well, what else? There are campaign badges, which means that you can, if you play narratives later that are different named narratives, you can keep some of your battle honors or all your battle honors, um, if you have the campaign badge from this particular crusade. So this is kind of just a mechanic that lets you keep your battle honors across narratives if you just had to play with the same army in more than one narrative. So that's nice. Um, there are allies of what is that? Convenience. So of course, this is saying you're not strictly tied to like say making Imperium players only be defenders. One could maybe be an attacker or an opportunist, depending. The campaign master should make sure that that makes sense narratively and work with the players to make sure that that makes sense, so that players kind of know which team they're on and they can keep the teams even. They're trying to say the priority here is to keep the teams even instead of like be as narratively accurate as possible. They say here you should play a campaign within 2 weeks. Lol. That will never happen. I mean, crusades take a long time. Players are busy. They have their own lives. I anticipate playing my crusade over the course of like 3 to 6 months. They are dividing the campaign into phases, and they're suggesting that those phases be a fixed number of times. And those phases are going to be incursion, strike force, and onslaught. Or no, they're not. I'm sorry. The campaign phases are kind of. I'm not sure what size games you play here. So they're dividing the campaign into essentially 3 acts, and every phase one, phase two, and phase three, there will be a different winner of that phase. You will get campaign points based on your wins, draws, and losses in that particular phase of the campaign based on the size of the battle that you play. So if like two players with 2,000 point um, orders of battle play, they're going to play a strike force battle, which is actually worth more points towards winning that particular phase of the campaign than two players who play in 1,000 point game. And then based on your number of wins, each team is going to add this total up at the end of the campaign phase, and they're going to get a number of strategic points for winning that phase. And then the alliance with the most strategic points at the end of the actual campaign wins. Phase three is worth more than phase two, so as the crusade goes on and you get experience playing, the stakes are going to get higher and higher. And that, I think, wraps it up. Other than that, we have specific mission rules, and I'm not, again, going to go into too much detail here, other than to say that there are no secondaries here. You will be using agendas and experience on units, and I will scroll through quickly each of these pages, but I'll do a dedicated video that goes over these missions at a later date. So these are the missions here. These are both Strike Force and Incursion missions, so they're proportionally set up the same. And then there are Onslaught missions, which are played on a much wider board. And that's it for the Crusade rules. So, what do we think about my specific thoughts about this? Well, oh, sorry. I'll go all the way back to the beginning. Specific thoughts. I wish this was a little bit less confusing than ninth edition. This is still the way this is structured and the rules are explained is a little bit more intuitive, but that could be the fact that I've just played Crusade before. The reason to like make a dedicated video that actually explains this to people are kind of myriad. Crusade is a bit of a confusing game mode. As I think I mentioned in the video so far, there's a lot of different points that are flowing around, a lot of different experience markers or things to tally to keep track of, a lot of bookkeeping. Again, Administratum is an excellent tool to keep track of that, even if you have to pay a little bit of money for it. Um, Things have not really been simplified as far as the order of battle is concerned. Although there are some streamlined changes that are made to, say, um, requisitions, which allow characters to not start the crusade quite so overpowered. There's some changes to renowned heroes. Battle scars and fresh recruits are much more impactful. Adding additional enhancements is harder. Um, like than it was in ninth edition. And yeah, battle scars are hugely more important. Capping individual units at 3 ranks and therefore 3 battle honors without spending frankly enormous amount of requisition points. Because you only get one of these per game, and you're probably playing a game once every couple of weeks, if not once a month. Maybe you're playing more frequently than that. If so, great. Um, 3 requisition points is a lot, and so these are going to cost you a lot. And this, especially repair and recuperate on a really veteran unit, when you roll a battle scar for like a unit with 4 battle honors, it's going to hurt because saving up 5 RP to remove that battle scar is really not very feasible. You're going to be wanting to spend your requisition points on either upgrading the size of your overall roster, making some changes, but probably most importantly, um, buying enhancements, um, or doing other things like that. Most players at the very beginning of the game are liking to increase their supply limit to make their order of battle bigger because there are benefits to that. The first is that you get a larger roster of units to choose from when you're actually playing a game, which means you have some flexibility when creating your army list in order to tailor that to specific matchups if you want to. Some people might find that gamey. Have a talk with your campaign master if you think that counterpicking your opponent um, by having by like hand picking units from your order of battle to counter their faction is flavorful or not, or really narratively friendly or not. The only other things I would, I guess, suggest for Crusade are kind of the things that I suggest to my group when we're running Crusade, which is this is a casual game mode. Help each other. Everyone's new to 10th edition. Everyone is also probably new to Crusade. If they are new to Crusade and they don't know how much bookkeeping is involved, help each other. Double check each other's work. answer any questions that players might have. My crusade has a lot of new players in it, so let players make mistakes. Let them take back stuff. This is not a tournament. Do not bring, in my opinion, you can do whatever you want, right? But in my opinion, don't bring a tournament list to a crusade. A crusade is supposed to allow you to express the faction on the tabletop in its particular style of war. So, for example, if a Space Marine tournament list is just three Desolation squads in the backfield bombing you from out of line of sight until you're dead, or an Eldari list is three Wraith Knights totally destroying you with like devastating wounds and shenanigans. Like, don't bring that to a narrative. Like, an Eldar list for a narrative would be like one of each aspect squad, some Guardians, and then as you start accruing casualties, maybe you start bringing Wraith units. Like, it's kind of, it would be narratively cool if, like, you remove a unit from your order of battle and then you replace it with a Wraith Guard unit to represent the fact that that unit has died but has now been transitioned into its Wraith Knight construct, which is a really cool and flavorful way to actually play Crusade. And that is what Crusade is about. It's about having a narrative experience with your friends, making a cool story, um, really enjoying the games that you're playing and using them to craft like bitter rivalries and like just really cool moments that you can look back on fondly. And so yeah, I would just keep that in mind when you're playing this particular rule set. Um, yeah, just don't take super try hard stuff and piss off your friends because you're going to be playing a lot of games with them. So don't be that guy. The only thing I would say about Crusade in general is that it's a very casual game mode, so treat it as such. And then yeah, I think that's going to be it for the video. We're just going to wrap it up. I'll be releasing a formal video that talks about like the differences and tries to teach people Crusade and the narrative ropes of like list building because oftentimes this is a way that a lot of players want to play the game, right? It's a really cool way to play the game, to build your own kind of like a build-a-bear for your army, and that's really great and compelling and really interesting. But it also is a lot of bookkeeping, and for a new player especially, even though 10th edition is supposed to be more simple, it's pretty overwhelming. So I will be releasing a video that tries to take these Crusade rules and summarize them in a nice, easy to understand way. So look forward to that, please. If you like this kind of video and appreciate me, putting this video out here on day one instead of like putting some Terminators together from the Leviathan box, then please don't hesitate to leave a like or subscribe to the channel for more 40K content in the future. If you want to give me one more of these so I can keep doing some stuff and keep my fuel, so I can keep doing this kind of content, then you can head over to patreon.com/commandphase and join there. No Discord yet. Really working on the community side of this kind of, channel and community, but I'm looking forward to growing that. So please stay updated for that too. Other than that, thanks guys for tuning in, and I hope you have a good day today putting this stuff together and hopefully getting some games in 10th edition with your friends. So take care, and I'll see you guys on the tabletop. Cheers.